As you can see through looking at my account very quickly, I am something of a endgame, or at the very least, a far, far, far late game player inside Raid Shadow Legends. So I have my Marius, right? I have my Carnage, he's 6-star Awakened. I have Mikage, I have 3 other mythicals, including Embrace, right? I was lucky enough to pull 2 other mythicals. I have a lot of fusions, a lot of awakenings across my account. All that is to say that, I'm not necessarily bragging, even though I am a little bit, but it is very rare that an epic champion is truly a game changer for me at this stage on my account, especially if that epic champion is not fully awakened, +4 empowered, and all those sorts of good things, right? But today, we are going to be talking about a epic champion that was exactly that, a massive game changer for my account that will help me progress towards the new mythical that we have inside the game that we can get for free, who Plarium is probably going to rework at some point because she's kind of booty cheeks right now. But that being said, before we talk about him, if you like content like this, make sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe button and go ahead and like the video as well, because YouTube likes all that sort of good stuff. So make sure to help out the video, help out the channel. Let's hop straight into it. So we have faction wars we have to progress through, and obviously Skinwalkers are one of the factions that we have to beat for that as well. Now, there's a lot of very decent champions inside the Skinwalkers, right? But there's a notable lack of a certain level of support. So we're going to go ahead and just filter by everybody that I have on my account for Skinwalkers champions, right? Now, when we start to look at options that contain any sort of buffs in the way of heals, so continuous heals, increased defense options, block debuffs, certainly, right? I don't have a single block debuffs champion from the Skinwalker faction. Any sort of taunt champions, there's not really any options. Basically, just any really strong support options are not really all that present on the team, right? Or on the faction, rather. You can't have them present on your team because they simply don't exist, especially not at an epic or a rare level. So that being said, we also don't really have any sort of revivers. So if we look at other effects, at least not revivers that heal. We have plenty of revivers, right? So we have, for example, obviously, Uko. We have Ugo, who's another option as well. Sorry, she's Ogren tribes, not Skinwalkers. But we have this other guy here as well, before he's the Tusked, right? One of my favorite champions. But even these revivers don't bring any sort of heals to the table. They just bring other types, right? So other types of support. So whether it be buffs, whether it be debuffs, right? In the way of Uko, which is a major problem, because when you're trying to progress through faction wars, you're going to be taking a lot of hits, and especially for the boss-related content, you're going to be getting smacked around quite thoroughly, right? Because, the bosses aren't going to be able to be one-shot in most cases for 99% of the player base. So, what is the solution to that? Well, there's a few options. So you have somebody like a Steel Skull, who can come in here, do a cleanse, heal them by 40%. You have him also doing an AoE increased defense, healing everybody 20% of their max HP, and a chance of a poison on the A1. Now, Steel Skull is still absolutely fantastic for this content in 2025, right? So he is certainly a fantastic option for your account. If you happen to have him, right, him and his beautiful nipple piercings, right, go ahead and use him. You have another option in the way of Rain Beast, who on the A1 places a continuous heal. He has a revive if needed, and then he also has a shield on a champion when they're getting smacked, right? But the option that I found that really worked well for my account is one that people haven't really talked about, and I believe he was part of a former fusion, and that is Bovos Sharphorn. Now, Bovos has some decent reviews, right? Kind of across the board. He looks absolutely fantastic with like his what is this, like a hexagram or something like that on his back. He's just that super kind of like demonic looking goat person, right? It's absolutely awesome. But he is so good, ladies and gentlemen, and we're going to talk about why. So let's go ahead and take a look at his A1. Defiled Earth attacks one enemy, has a 50% chance of placing a decreased speed on the enemy for 2 turns. Already a very solid A1, especially once you factor in things like counterattacks, ally attacks, all that sort of stuff, right? A2, Locus of Diabolism, attacks all enemies, so already pretty decent for an option for like stun set or something like that. Has a 100% chance of placing a decreased crit rate and a decreased crit damage debuff on all enemies for 2 turns. Now, ladies and gentlemen, when I say that this changed my experience trying to beat the boss inside Faction Wars Hard, I am not being hyperbolic. This was a absolute game changer for me. So I was hard stuck on stage 14 of Skinwalkers because I had so much damage that I brought to the table. And I had some decent supports, but not really anybody who could just do damage mitigation as well as bringing some sort of heals, which we'll talk about in his kit. A3, AoE remove 1 debuff, right? So an AoE cleanse, right? Basically, which is fantastic because the boss, especially on stage 14, is placing things like, what is it? Provokes and maybe block active skills. I think it's just provokes though. Then places an increased crit rate and increased crit damage buff on all allies for 2 turns. Finally, we have a passive, which ironically is some pretty decent healing. He's going to heal an ally by 10% of their max HP when they're hit with a critical hit. This guy is absolutely sensational. So let's just kind of summarize his kit real quick. You have a decreased speed, which is fantastic. It means the enemies are going to take less turns. You have an AoE decreased crit rate and decreased crit damage. Most enemies in PvE content only have 15% crit rate, so once you get that decreased crit rate on them, they cannot crit you. This removes so much RNG and it makes it so much simpler for you to beat a lot of content inside the game. And then finally, you also have an increased crit rate, as well as increased crit damage, which is going to mean that your champions can do significantly more damage if you really need to. You also have the option to build them with less crit rate, so you can build them with 85% crit rate instead, which allows you to spec into a lot of other stats like resistances, maybe HP, defense, crit damage, right? So he opens up a ton of options for your team. Plus, on top of that, he's bringing heals when you are hit with a critical hit. So he brings the option to decrease their chance to crit. And if he doesn't have that up, if they're immune to it, if they have block debuffs, whatever, when you get hit by a critical hit, he's going to heal you instead to help offset that effect. This guy is so good for Faction Wars. So good. I built him out with the hope that he would be decent. I kind of messed around for some time. Beating that stage, I tried Steel Skull, right? I built him out. I booked him out. Didn't work. I tried using Hoforhes and Uko combined together. No bueno, right? And I didn't put, like, you know, absolute best in slot gear on every single champion because this was kind of before we had that permanent free regearing. You know, Rain Beast, I tried him as well. Just didn't work, right? And that's not to say that you couldn't get it done with these champions. It's just that I couldn't get it done. And Bovos is the option that did it for me. So let's go ahead and take a look at his stats. First of all, we have 58,000 HP. 3,900 defense, 264 on the speed, 434 on the resistance, and then 329 on the accuracy. I'm not going to read them out again, but I'll flip it over to Faction Wars here so you guys can check out my area bonuses and see what we're working with in that particular area. So he's built very solidly, obviously, right? Very, very solid build on him. I don't have any masteries on him. This is how good he is, right? He's not even mastered out. Don't have a relic on him. He still helped to carry my team through Faction Wars hard. Now, let's go ahead and just kind of run him through some content. Unfortunately, Faction Wars Hard for the Skinwalkers is not open at the time of recording this, but I was able to push past the boss on stage 14 and now start farming up to stage 15, which is going to be so big because obviously Skinwalkers are one of my strongest factions, I think, especially when it comes to damage. So it's going to be kind of easy to push through that. We'll go ahead and we'll just take him in somewhere nice and light, like perhaps stage 10 of the event dungeon. Right now, I don't necessarily think he's going to be, you know, the option that you want to use for the event dungeon or anything like that. This is essentially just a way for me to kind of showcase him. He doesn't have any sort of an aura or anything like that. We'll bring, I don't want to bring too much strong damage because if I do, they're just gonna, you know, absolutely destroy them. He is fairly fast though, so we could bring a damage dealer as long as they're slower. What's the speed on our Aphodus? He's at 177. That's perfect. We'll bring Aphodus, right? So we'll go ahead and do a regular run in here. No super raids or anything like that. Just kind of show you his animations and what he's all about. So we have Arbiter coming in, increase attack, right? Now, Bovos is going to give us the option to increase our own crit rate as well as crit damage, but also cleanse, right? So if you have any sort of CCs on you, right? Because a lot of times in PvE content, you can get stunned, slept, provoked, decreased speed, decreased accuracy, all those sorts of things. He is going to be able to cleanse that off. And we also have the option to do an AoE where we're basically saying, hey, now you guys can't crit us, right? And the decreased crit damage doesn't really mean a whole lot because they can't crit, obviously, because they have 15% crit rate and we have the decreased crit rate on them. But we can now just do an AoE and absolutely slam into them. And obviously, my Aphodus isn't like fully built out or anything like that, so that's kind of why you see him not really one-shotting a boss there, which is kind of funny, but a little bit unfortunate, right? So Bovos opens up so many options for you, and even if we take a look at the Skinwalkers faction from, you know, something like from the champion index here, right? Like, we have options. We have somebody like a Hackhorn who's going to do like an a cleanse. I cannot think, apparently. Like, he's actually a very, very good option, and I do have him, so I could have built him out. Full cleanse, block debuffs, 2 turns, heals everybody. Heals everybody if they have extra debuffs removed from them, right? So he's a fantastic option. You don't even need books to fully make use of this. So if you have Hackhorn, go ahead and use him. He's probably just going to be straight up an upgrade over somebody like a Bovos. But at the end of the day, a lot of people aren't going to have, you know, the one legendary that just happens to bring good support inside this faction. Now, obviously, if you have Great Hoof Loriaka, she's going to be a fantastic option as well, even though her reviews don't really say such. But with the turn meter fill, decreased resistance, she doesn't actually bring heals. I thought she brought heals, so she's not going to be too strong. But you know, like, even the faction unity option is very good for damage. It's a very, like, damage-based faction. The mythicals, certainly lots of damage coming in there. Like, really for support, like for heals and stuff like that, like heals specifically when I say support. So, like, obviously we have Uko who's doing buff strips and revives and all that sort of stuff, right? But when it comes to heals, even at a legendary level, really the only option you have is Hackhorn Smash Lord. Certainly at a epic level, there's not really too much for options out there. Like, you have control, you have damage, but you just don't really have any sort of heals or any sort of like champions that can really help you to stay alive. You know, you do have a revive and a continuous heal on the revived ally, and you do have a continuous heal and an increased defense on a 4-turn cooldown from Meat Carver to Log, but you know, realistically, between him and Bovos, I think one of them is going to be significantly easier to keep alive, and it's certainly not the rare champion, right? But all that being said, let me know if you have any experience with Bovos, where you use him and all those sorts of good things. Kind of showed you a quick overview of the champion, so not necessarily too in-depth, because I don't think he's going to be an option that most people will use for really late-game content, end-game content, but he's certainly viable in a lot of that endgame content, right? So most of the time when players are pushing through stuff like this, they're going to have better options, but if you don't, he's one that will suffice perfectly well.